couple of things on President Obama's executive order, which basically prioritized what the Department of Homeland Security was going to do and who they were going to pursue in terms of undocumented immigrants in this country. The president essentially instituted not a full-on DREAM Act, because, of course, this is not legislatively, but basically set the parameters in which, and this happens all the time, in which the executive branch will prioritize certain prosecutions or certain administrative functions, essentially allowing any children under the age of 16 or any children who were brought to this country under the age of 16 by parents who were undocumented or presumably who overstayed their visas, which about half of all undocumented immigrants are, people who came through the country through a legal process and then overstayed their visas. And, of course, it set a high bar for all of these children. They must have graduated high school or gotten an equivalent, served in the military, have no problems with the law. They can't be over the age, I think it is, of 30. People who have essentially come to this country by no choice of their own and been model citizens. This is a big problem for Mitt Romney. Why? Well, this is Mitt Romney back at the end of 2011. You remember way back then when he was a candidate in the Republican primaries. Here he is.
Hi there.
Hi. If you're elected and Congress passes the DREAM Act, would you veto it?
The question is, if I were elected and Congress were to pass the DREAM Act, would I veto it? And the answer is yes.
Okay, so there we have Mitt Romney saying unequivocally and very forcefully, if the Congress passed the DREAM Act, I would veto it. He goes on to say, well, I would make a special exception for people who serve in the military. Wow, that's wonderful. And then, now this is a long time after that, almost 7 months after that. Not quite 7, but almost 7 months. A lot of things can happen in 7 months. That's 7/12 of a year-long gym membership. And here is Mitt Romney on Face the Nation addressing Obama's immigration policy.
Thanks, Bob. We really appreciate it. I think we ought to just get right to the news.
All right.
And I would say he's not in the Face the Nation set. He's like, hey, Bob, I have an idea. Why don't we go to a random farm so I can seem like I'm a real heartland guy? Particularly after that whole incident with the Iowa restaurant where where myself and my underlings crapped all over the place and didn't really sort of uphold that salt of the earth type of thing. Let's do this on a farm, shall we, Bob? Sure.
The president said Friday the government will no longer seek to deport 800,000 of these young illegal immigrants who were brought into this country by their parents. I think you said this is just a short-term solution to a long-term problem. But would you repeal this order if you became president?
Well, let's step back and look at the issue. I mean, first of all, we have to secure the border. We need to have an employment verification system to make sure that those that are working here in this country are here legally. And then with regards to these kids who were brought in by their parents through no fault of their own, there needs to be a long-term solution so they know what their status is. This is something Congress has been working on, and I thought we were about to see some proposals brought forward by Senator Marco Rubio and by Democrat senators. But the president jumped in and said, I'm going to take this action. He called it a stopgap measure. I don't know why he feels stopgap measures are the right way to go.
Well, what would you do about it?
Well, as you know, he was president for the...
You know, Bob Schieffer looks like he's worried that he's just not going to make it through this interview. If Romney's going to continue to filibuster like this, I think Bob Schieffer's like worried. Like, I wonder if I'm ever going to hear the end of this question. So I've got to interrupt here. And then Romney continues.
Last 3.5 years did nothing on immigration. 2 years he had a Democrats House and Senate, did nothing of a permanent or long-term basis. That what I would do is I'd make sure that by coming into office, I would work with Congress to put in place a long-term solution for the children of those that have come here illegally. And I've said, for instance, that those who serve in the military, I would give permanent residence to.
Sure. But would you repeal this?
Well, it would be overtaken by events, if you will, by virtue of my putting in place a long-term solution with legislation which creates law that relates to these individuals such that they know what their setting is going to be, not just for the term of a president, but on a permanent basis.
What? Wait. What? Who's giving this guy lessons? Sarah Palin? That last bit was just fantastic. Wait a second. Let's
Make sure that by coming into office, I would work with Congress to put in place a long-term solution for the children of those
so Bob
that have
Schieffer's
come
like,
here
wait,
illegally.
will you answer the
And
question?
I've said, for instance, that those who serve in the military, I would give permanent residence to.
So.
But would you repeal this?
Well, it would be overtaken by events, if you will, by virtue of my putting in place a long-term solution with legislation which creates law that relates to these individuals such that they know what their setting is going to be, not just for the term of a president, but on a permanent basis.
Yeah. What? So Mitt Romney, again, proving that he's just a horrible candidate. I mean, just unbelievable. I couldn't. That was one of the favorite moments. That long-term solution with legislation which creates law, as you know. And
it's one of those instances where, let me put a bunch of nice-sounding words together and make myself sound smart.
Events will overtake any type of capacity to have a legislation which creates law, as you know, Bob. I don't need to tell you that. Forthwith, as such, in pertaining to these people who are, people at that time, which we will see subsequent to the time in which it follows. So that's my answer. I don't know how I can be any more clear than that. I don't. We're going to subsequently talk about the referendum on the nature of the law and the specificity of the problems. I don't know if you see the silo behind me, Bob, but there's a farm, so here I am. I'm sorry, what was the question?